have I wrought? Oh! I'm going to regret this. I'm going to regret it absolutely everywhere, including...
in the mountains.
Where I have a secret cabin and cave. Right, more meaty content. It's very much a speculative show today, what can I say? That's just the way of it. There really hasn't been all that much happening this week, except for the whole Stars thing. Just incidentally, congratulations. Seriously? Well done on beating that encounter. Good God. Defying expectations, anyone? Shocking. Absolutely shocking, but good God. Congratulations from everyone here at WoW Radio to Stars. Well done. I don't have this whole national bias thing. I don't mind where the guys who beat it come from. All I know is that beating an encounter like that is so freaking hard that even if they come from Timbuktu or the land before time, or they are...
in the mountains,
then you've got to respect that. You've got to respect any guild that can do that. It's insane. The difficulty curve is ridiculous. And defying the expectations, oh, it's mathematically impossible. Evidently not. Evidently not. Impressive. Well, there is something I do need to remind you guys of before we go into the next topic, which is the fact that you can submit your topics for the end of the show in the elusive choice. You can email themurloc@gmail.com. That is themurloc@gmail.com if you have something that you would like discussed at the end of the show. If it's good, I may talk about it. If it's not, then I will not. And that is entirely your problem. And yes, I'm going to run this in the mountains thing into the ground before the show is over. That I can guarantee. By the time we get to the end, we'll probably never speak of it again. Okay. Now, so of course, the big news this week is that Stars, a Chinese guild playing on Taiwanese servers, managed to beat the so-called impossible boss fight, Yogg-Saron plus 0. Now, for those of you who do not know what Yogg-Saron plus 0 is, Yogg-Saron has a watcher mechanic, and the 4 keepers of Ulduar that you kill, well, in this case you don't actually kill them, that's Freya, Thorim, Mimiron, and Hodir. Once they are beaten, they will spawn in the centre of the chamber above Yogg-Saron's pit of despair and madness and heretics and monsters and Sindri and so forth. And they will offer aid. You can talk to them and say, do you want me to help you? And you can say yes. And in the fight, they will aid you with a variety of buffs and special abilities. Now, Yogg-Saron plus 4 keepers is the easiest version of Yogg-Saron. Yogg-Saron plus no keepers, as in no help from these guys, is the hardest. And until a couple of days ago, it was considered to be mathematically impossible. Now, what we discussed on last week's show was the fact that Exodus also believed it was mathematically impossible, and as opposed to, trying to prove him wrong, or, just not doing it at all, decided they would cheat, and got banned, and there was much laughing. And much drama, and much crying, and much...
epic!
Yes. Now, this guild Stars defied all the critics, defied everything possible, and decided, hey, we're going to go do it anyway. And they did. And they posted the strategy, and they posted a video. And it looks entirely legitimate. The video is available on mmochampion.com. It's mmochampion.com if you want to go check it out. I would suggest that you do. So here's the question. Were this fight actually impossible? Would it have been acceptable for Blizzard to put it in the game? Now, by impossible, we mean that at the current level of gear, it just simply isn't doable. Now, obviously, in the case of Yogg-Saron, that was not the case. But, what if it were? Let's assume that the theory crafters were right. The numbers were right, everything was good, there's no possible way that you could have beaten Yogg-Saron plus 0 in a million freaking years. Let's assume that that was correct. Which evidently it wasn't. Would it have been acceptable for Blizzard to put in a fight that could have only been beaten with the next tier of gear in a previous tier instance? Good question. Well, to answer that question, you've got to look at what Blizzard actually have done in the past. As in, how many impossible fights have you seen, and for what reason were they impossible? Now, there are 2 kinds of impossible rooster block fight that were in TBC and Vanilla. The first was something that wasn't beatable because it was bugged to hell. Examples: Razorgore, Veilstraz. There's 2. Cthulhu. Double eye beams, everybody. Everyone loves double eye beams. All manner of stuff like that. Crazy stuff. Oro. Another impossible one because it was bugged to hell. And then you've got the fights that are just so unbelievably hard that you can't figure out a way to do them until they evidently get nerfed. Now, there's been a couple of fights like that as well. But the majority of the time, the reason that guilds get stuck is because the fight is bugged. Yeah, we're talking about the cutting-edge guilds here. They get stuck in a fight because the boss is just not killable. And yet, they'll bash their head up against it regardless, because that's just the way they roll. Yeah? They are determined. That is what they do. So, do we have any examples of something that's been so unbelievably difficult that it's been unkillable? At least until it got nerfed. Well, personally, I can't think of any, but if you can, then by all means, email themurloc@gmail.com. That is themurloc@gmail.com. I mean, you look at stuff in TBC, yeah, and Karazhan was cleared. And then they cleared everything up to Vash, and Vash was bugged, and Vash needed to get fixed, and once Vash was fixed, it was killed. Kael'thas, bugged, until it was fixed. Then they could kill it. Allah, well, was Allah bugged? So you know what? I can't really remember if it was or wasn't. Anyone that was around that time actually raiding that content, then by all means, email it to me, themurloc@gmail.com. That is themurloc@gmail.com. And you can tell me about that, because I have a feeling Allah was bugged to some respect, or maybe it was just overtuned. I mean, there were tuning issues in TBC. I don't think anyone really believes otherwise. A lot of the fights in TBC were overtuned, initially, and they nerfed them down. But there were still guilds just killing it anyway. And generally speaking, it was only bugs that got in the way. Now, I think this is probably the first real time that there has been a block simply because of massive amounts of difficulty. Seriously, massive amounts of difficulty. Where people have believed it is impossible. Now, evidently it was not. Whether Blizzard knew that, I have no idea. I don't know whether or not Blizzard expected this fight to be killed. And there lies the problem. There lies the issue right there. Is it okay to have a hard mode fight that can't be killed until the next tier? Well, at the moment, I would say no. Actually, it isn't. And the reason is that we discussed the progression path and the way that it's been made so incredibly linear in the last show and the show before that. And on that blog post, which you can find on blueplease.blogspot.com. We are expecting the top-tier guilds to have cleared Ulduar and killed basically everything before the next piece of content comes out. And to never have to go back there. That seems to be the way of it. That's how they did it in Nax. They didn't want anyone to have to go back to Nax. Why do I say that? Well, they gave them all the epics they could possibly need in vast quantities. Why would you want to go back to Nax after that? After 6 months? Now, Ulduar is about 3 months old. When are the new fight's going to come out in 3.2? Well, one could probably say 4 to 5 months. Yeah, 4 to 5 months after Ulduar came out. Now, it's a much smaller instance. Yeah, it's Colosseum. It's about 5-6 fights max. As comparison to Ulduar, which is bloody enormous. And has a bunch of hard modes in it as well. Now, yes, they've got these 4 difficulty settings, but that's easy content. That's spreadsheets. That's, as Octail says, like 3 lines of Perl script. So, yes, there is a much, much smaller gap between there. And we expect those cutting-edge guilds to have cleared everything. Do we expect cutting-edge guilds to go back and kill the hard modes? Do we expect anyone to go back and kill the hard modes? Well, in this case, I would say no. And the best way to determine that is the fact that the item levels of stuff in Colosseum is vastly, vastly superior. Now, I can't remember precisely what they are, but we can have a look on MMO Champion. And MMO Champion will show you, yes it will show you some of the item levels of the gear that are available in the Colosseum. And they are vastly superior. Now, the stuff that you are getting on hard modes in Ulduar is about item level 239 through to about item level 246, as I recall correctly. Now, the stuff that you are getting in the loot table of 25 man and the loot table of 10 man, this is just some of the stuff that has been found so far. You're looking at daggers, which are item level 245. Now, all the way through item level 245, all of this stuff available there, item level 245. Yep, so that's as good as the best stuff out of Ulduar 25-man hard modes. And way better than anything that you can get in normal. The 10-man loot, the item level appears to be item level 232. Yep, item level 232. So, to be honest, I would expect guilds to just move straight onto this loot. And they're not going to do these hard modes to try and get all this other stuff because, well, why bother? Honestly, why bother? You can get all of this great loot from this new instance. You don't have to go back and bash your head against the hard modes. There's no point. Chances are there's nothing worth having anyway. And that's not to mention the hard mode stuff. I mean, we're looking at hard mode stuff and then harder hard mode stuff in the form of the tribute system. So we can expect, as I recall, I'm reading this, about up to item level 265 or something ridiculous like that. Vastly, vastly superior stuff. Really. And you can look at this stuff. I mean, here's some of the items you can get. Bindings of the Dark Essence. This is unbelievable. This is just from the 25-man normal. Bindings of the Dark Essence. 58 stamina, 58 int, 89 spell power, 38 hit, and 58 crit. That's nuts. That is... wow. That's some crazy shizzle right there, in my honest opinion. We've got a dagger there as well, but, you know, I can't read that because it's crazy melee stuff and I don't know anything about that. Not an awful lot of spell stuff has been revealed as of yet. Not an awful lot at all. But there is a 10-man staff here at item level 232, which is pretty crazy. 72 stamina, 92 int, 2 sockets, with a nice set bonus. 550 spell power, 108 haste, and 113 crit. Wow. That's just the 10-man version. That's normal 10-man. So why go back? I can't think of a good reason. So we come back to the point. Should there be any reason whatsoever other than simply to get a badge and a pat on the head to go do this stuff back in Ulduar? Answer is no. So should there ever be a reason for a fight to be impossible in Ulduar, or indeed any future instance with the current level of content that is available to you? Answer is no. Now I understand that developing a mechanic that is not gear-based, not a gear check fight, that is genuinely hard for all guilds, and is a challenge to the cutting-edge guilds, yeah, that's hard. Yeah, that's really difficult. Because these guys know their stuff, and to be honest, there's only a limited number of mechanics you can throw at them. There is fire, get out of it. There is beam, don't walk in it. Stuff like that. It's mostly visual, it's mostly obvious, and to create a fight that is complex, with all sorts of different things going on, that is not entirely reliant on gear, or that cannot be brute forced with gear, well, that's difficult. I think that's actually beyond the Blizzard design team, to be quite honest. Occasionally they show a flash of brilliance, but there is just so much stuff that's gear dependent. Particularly within rage timers and all sorts of stuff like that. And hard modes especially, very gear dependent. You're talking about getting a lot of DPS, a lot of healing, the ability to absorb a lot of damage. That's entirely gear dependent. Doesn't depend on your skill whatsoever. You can look at Mimiron. Mimiron's only real difference is he does more damage and there's fire on the ground. Adding fire to the ground, well, that doesn't make it all that hard. But yes, you've got to do a lot more damage, you've got to be able to heal a lot more because he's been buffed. Same with XT, same with any other fight like that. Just the lack of creativity there with the hard modes. So yeah. Conclusion on this subject is really quite simple. No, Blizzard should not be creating stuff that you have to go all the way back and do. Not with their current progression path. They've set up this progression path where you do one instance at a time, and that's just all there is to it. My concern, actually, is that the Colosseum, bearing in mind the numbers that we've seen, that we mentioned earlier, about Ulduar, the Colosseum is going to be doable for those who haven't beaten Ulduar yet. So what we have is a divergence there in the progression path. Is that a bad thing? Well, not necessarily, but I think it's a little bit late. I think this should have been in there from the very start. And I have concerns about the level of difficulty. It's confusing. It's all over the place. I don't see how it could work. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. It may be that the Colosseum does provide a challenge for those who haven't yet beaten Ulduar. And maybe gives them the gear to brute force it. But then again, why would they even bother? Unless they can clear this stuff incredibly fast in Colosseum and just get bored so they go back to Ulduar. I have the feeling people are just going to want to skip to the latest and greatest. I mean, they're being given the gear to do it, with the badge changes. They're being given the Conquest gear. They're being given the Tier 8.5, indeed the Tier 9, the free set of Tier 9 for doing heroics. So, can you really see these guys going back to Ulduar? I don't think you can. I really don't. Because if they really wanted to see Ulduar, they would have done it in the first place, and they would have got their shiz together. My name is Total Biscuit, you're listening to Blue Please here on WoW Radio, and I must point out I have a stotting headache. I will try and finish the show, but God, I can barely see. It's crazy. Maybe I should just go and get some air.
In the mountains.
Oh, yes. I'll catch you after the break, folks. Enjoy.